Assalamu alaikum. Assalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. When we read Quran, we see wave after wave of discussions that are centered around Tawheed, or oneness of God. That is the primary focus of Quran. Although, in doing so, there are a number of relevant concepts and discussions that Quran engages in. However, Tawheed, the oneness of God and oneness of God in creation and lordship, starts by focusing our attention to signs. Therefore, it keeps referring to ayat, or signs, in verses like أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقل الحمد لله سيريكم آياته فتعرفونها, and say, praise be to Allah, He will show you His signs so that you shall recognize them. Chapter 27, verse 93. Or وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ يُرْسِلَ الرِّيَاحَ مُبَشِّرَاتٍ وَلِيُذِيقَكُمْ مِنْ رَحْمَتِهِ. And of His signs is that He sends the winds as bearer of glad tidings, so that He lets you taste His mercy, His grace. Chapter 30, verse 46. Or وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And among His signs is that He created for you mates from amongst yourself, that you may live in tranquility with them. And He has put love and mercy between your hearts. Indeed, in that are signs for those who reflect, those who think. لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Or وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. عالمين. And among His signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the difference in your languages and your colors. Verily, in that are signs for those who know, those with knowledge. عالمين. In these verses, ayat means signs. So the premise is about recognizing the signs. We can talk about these verses in detail, but these are just example I'm giving you, where these verses start with وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, and among His signs, and end with things like لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. These are signs for those who think, who reflect. لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Those with knowledge, those who know. Now, sign recognition, or reading signs, is a method to reach ma'rifah, knowledge or insight. We have something called scientific knowledge or scientific insight, where we go to the laboratory and experiment by using a variety of instruments like microscope, etc., to gain knowledge or insight into something. Then there is another method called sign recognition to reach that knowledge, that insight, which is beyond the scientific method and beyond the lab experiments. Sign recognition is similar to the method detectives use. You know, the detectives, the police detectives, use a similar methodology. You know, like, let's say a murder has occurred. The murderer is gone, and the actual act has disappeared. That is, for us, the event, the crime itself, is in the past, and we did not see it. Only Allah knows what happened. Now, we want to discover what happened. In other words, discover the unseen. So, the detective comes and first starts going through the crime scene, through the method of sign recognition. and proceeds with the process of elimination. He tries to figure out the motive. Is there anything missing? Could the motive be theft? Was there a sign of a struggle? Who is the victim? What are the specifics about him? Let's say he was an 80-year-old man who was stabbed. So the detective eliminates any potential for sexual or drug-related crime. And no major theft because everything seems to be still in place. And the fact that the old man did not have much to be stolen anyway. Going through his room, he finds a small notebook in which there is a ledger where the old man recorded his money, and it showed a number of loans he gave to few people, and all paid him back except one, which was due last week. The detective then pursues this person, and he offers an alibi for the day the old man was killed. But his alibi does not check out, and once interrogated with the evidence they found, he confesses the crime is solved. Over the history, there have been many very well-known skilled detectives who have solved very complex crimes through the method of sign recognition. In the old days, they had limited tools to work with. Later, the fingerprints came, and now with blood sample and DNA and forensic science, they can pinpoint the signs implicating the crime or the criminal. In the old days, however, where there were no such tools, they had very famous detectives who were called upon to solve special and puzzling crimes. The noble Quran keeps saying ayat, signs, and calls us to recognize the signs around us. It invites us to go and look at all creation around us. Look at the order and the aim, the purpose, the repeatability, the scheme, the design. How are the creatures produced? How do they survive? Where does their sustenance come from? ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض وما بث فيهما من دابة. And among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth and the living creatures that has scattered through them, through the heavens and the earth. Chapter 42, verse 29. If you look at the animals, you will see the design, the scheme. Look at yourself, just the physical part, not even the emotional part or the spiritual part. You will see the careful design and the scheme and the aim. Therefore, the sign recognition that Quran directs us to is not some kind of philosophical or metaphysical discussion. It is rather an appeal to use our aql, intellect. It rather says, and among his signs, وَمِنْ آيَاتِ, and keeps repeating it for different signs and tajalliyat, manifestation. Of course, this does not mean we do not apply our aql in addition to our senses. The tool science uses to gain knowledge consists of the lab instruments, like the microscope, telescope, and other things. The primary tool sign recognition uses is aql, intellect, followed by our senses. As the Quran says, indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the difference of night and the day, and the ship sailing upon the sea, which is of use to men, and the water which Allah sends down from the sky, thereby reviving the earth after its death, and dispersing all kinds of creatures therein, and in the ordinance of the winds and the clouds, obedient between heavens and earth, are signs for people who have senses, people who use aql, intellect. Chapter 2, verse 164. لَآيَاتٍ لقوم يعقلون. That means they reflect on these creations and their relations to each other. And your tool, your weapon is aql, intellect. لقوم يعقلون. So the tool for the science is our senses, the instruments, and the experiments in the laboratory. The tool for reading the signs is aql. Now, someone may ask, why are we not given tools and sense that the tools that sense God? Like we sense heat, we sense cold, or see or hear things. Or why aren't we given sensors that detect God, sensors to recognize God? The answer is simple. The tool to get to know or to gain knowledge on something must be suitable for it, must be, fitting for it, must fit it. For instance, your eye is a tool, a sensor to see what is apparent, what is exposed, what's out there, or what can be seen. In other words, it is fit to see the matter, the material, not the unseen. Your ear is suitable to detect or sense the air movement, the waves, all of which are matter or dimensions of matter or material. But God is not a matter or material to be seen or heard. If it was so, then it would be a God limited to the dimensions of matter or material. What about your aql, intellect? Aql is a separate force, a separate but powerful tool and force. It comprehends things that are not understood by experiment or tools in the laboratory. It comprehends things that may not be seen by our eyes or heard by our ears or other sensors. For example, when Quran says, هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا. Has there come upon man ever any period of time when he was nothing, not even mentioned? Chapter 76, verse 1. Which means there was a period in time when man was nothing, did not exist, and not even mentioned as part of the greater creation. This is something everyone agrees, everybody, that earth had no residents, including humans who came long after. Therefore, we see here our aql, intellect, can think about and even comprehend nothingness. Adam, they call it Adam or nothingness. It can imagine non-existence. Now, can you take nothingness to the lab and experiment with it? Can you even see or hear nothingness? We all agree there was once upon a time that human did not exist on earth. We fully understand the concept of nothingness with our aql. But can nothingness be experimented in the lab? What about human emotions? Can you take emotions like anger, sorrow, love, compulsion, obsession, and things alike to the lab and measure their weight or dimensions? But we know they exist because our aql tells us so. Even regarding the science itself, it is wrong to think that science is purely experimental within the confines of the laboratory. We do experiment in the lab, but it is our intellect, our aql, that takes it to the next level of understanding and generalize it. For example, Archimedes' physical law of buoyancy states that any object completely or partially submerged in a fluid at rest is acted upon by an upward force equal to the weight of the fluid displaced by the object. This buoyant force on a body floating in a liquid is also equivalent to, in the magnitude, to the weight of the floating object, but in the opposite direction. So the object neither rises nor sinks. For example, a ship that is launched sinks into the ocean until the weight of the water it displaces, once it goes in the water, is just equal to its own weight. As the ship is loaded, it sinks deeper, displacing more water, and so the magnitude of the buoyant force continuously matches the weight of the ship and its cargo. So it floats. In other words, when the object is placed in the water, its weight is reduced by the amount of water it displaces. That's it. That's the law. That's the law of buoyancy from Archimedes. Now, this law can be tested in the lab, or in the bathtub, or in an ocean. And the law says any object in any water or fluid. The question is, have we tested this law with any object known to man? In any water or fluid known to man? The answer is obviously no, we haven't. Then how do we know this law works on every object and any fluid? It is our aql, intellect, that tells us so. Another example, when someone mentions a line or a surface like a square, our intellect understands it perfectly, the two-dimensional object. It understands perfectly the two-dimensional object. But can that be realized in the real world? In the real world, all lines or surfaces are three-dimensional. All lines and surfaces within our nature have the third dimension called thickness. Even a piece of paper, which is a very thin surface, has the third dimension, which is its thickness. Hence, has even volume. A true two-dimensional line or surface can only exist or be imagined in our mind. It is our intellect that can separate a true two-dimensional surface without considering the other dimensions. We don't think of all this because the experimental science has advanced so much that we have forgotten its basis is on aql, intellect. Hence, the foundation of all science is aql. The power of intellect enables us to separate things that are otherwise inseparable in the nature. So, to the naive scientist who says, unless I sense God with my scientific lens or instrument, I will not believe he exists, we say, the poor soul does not realize that what he is trying to detect with his scientific lens is matter, an object, a mass, a material with dimension, and limited to dimensions, nothing more. A God that can be detected by a scientific lens is a God with limitation, with dimension. It is aql that can go beyond the laboratory tools and instruments. So, in the end, we have tools and instruments to gain knowledge and insight into the nature, to get to know the nature and the physical world, and that is our physical and experimental science and senses, which is founded by our aql, intellect. And then we have what is beyond the human perception, beyond our physical world. And the only way to gain insight and recognize it would be through our intellect, our aql. It can separate things, understand things like nothingness. It can understand things that cannot be experimented or measured in a lab. It is through aql that one can read the signs and wonder about this complex system of creation and realize that there is a precise order, repeatability, and intelligence behind it. A creator, a designer, a planner, a manager who is outside of the system, not part of it. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is nothing like him, and he is all-encompassing. Hence, as we said, we need to pay more attention to intellectual aspects and not just the scientific aspects. Of course, science can be employed to help man discover these signs, these precise order, the intelligence. For example, through genealogy and DNA sequencing, we are discovering an amazing sign of God's work. This is why Quran says, لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. Signs for those who use their intellect. Or asks the question, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Do you not use your mind? Do you not think? Do you not reflect? But God also enjoins us to discover through science as well in order to read his signs. As he says, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرْ كَيْفَ بَدَأَ الْخَلْقِ. Say, travel the land and see how Allah did originate creation. Chapter 29, verse 20. Travel here means to go, seek knowledge through discoveries in the nature. Or Quran says, قُلْ انظُرُوا مَاذَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا تُغْنِيَ الْآيَاتُ وَالنُّذُرِ عَنْ قَوْمٍ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Say, look at what is in the heavens and the earth, but neither signs nor warnings help the unbeliever. Chapter 10, verse 101. For unbeliever, these signs are not enough, or they do not see these signs, or have closed their hearts and minds on them. One has to be seeking the truth so the signs become apparent to him. At any case, recognizing God through his signs is a huge topic to discuss. But Muslims, the believers, need to pay more attention to the Quran, because unless we recognize God through his signs, we will not feel accountable. We will not feel responsible. Unless we feel accountable, the moral and ethical issues will not be addressed. Therefore, recognition of God must be accompanied with his worship, so the optimum result is reached. Once we recognize God through his signs and get to know him, his attributes, we will worship him and serve him out of love for him. So, a materialist or maddiyun can also take a telescope and look. But here it means look through the lens of intellect, aql, and recognize your creator through these signs. Discover the unseen through what can be seen, which are the signs or footprints. One of the differences between those of us who believing in Tawheed, oneness of God, and those who do not, is that we believe there is order, nizam, behind everything in the universe. So do the unbelievers, or the materialists, or the secular. However, in addition, we believe there is an intelligence, a design behind this order. As Quran asks, وَمَنْ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ. Who regulates all affairs? Who directs the affairs in the universe? That is, there is a plan or scheme and a purpose behind everything in the creation by the intelligence that created them. For example, he has decreed the sustenance, provision for all the creatures in the universe. You see, for example, how the birds build a nest, how they gather sticks of wood, and how they place them horizontally and vertically to tie them together so it stays on top of the tree, and how they feed their young ones, and many, many other examples. We don't have to go far when we study the human life cycle, from the time the fetus is formed to the time he is born, and the stages he goes through before he reaches the adulthood. When the fetus is formed in mother's womb, it then goes through multiple stages where the bones appear, then the meat over the bone, and the rest of the body is developed, followed by additional growth until the time it is ready to enter this world. The baby then turns upside down in order to come out with the head, not with the feet. Every part of his body has a purpose. The whole turning upside down has a purpose because it would present a difficulty if it comes with the feet, if it comes out with the feet. He has eyes to see. Imagine if there was no light. What would be the purpose of eyes? He has ears to hear, brain to think, hands to grab things. He moves flexibly through the joints in the arm and legs. When he's born, he does not have teeth because his digestion system is not ready for solid food. So he survives with mother's milk, which, by the way, in itself, it is important to ponder, as the mother's milk did not, the mother who did not produce any milk up until, when she has the baby, her body produces the milk for baby's consumption. Gradually, the baby grows teeth as his digestive system becomes ready to take solid food. So everything hand in hand in relation with each other. As the teeth grow, the digestive system gets ready to take solid food. Every step of the way, we see there is aim, there is purpose, which are all signs of tadbir, design. Look at the animal world. Watch a few documentaries, and you'll see the plan, the design. For all this, Quran asks one question. Man yudabbirul amr. Who is the main designer? Who is the main planner? Who regulates all affairs? This is where the secular, the materialist, is dumbfounded and has nothing to say. While he does believe there is order in all the universe, otherwise it would be chaos, but still does not see the signs. Therefore, when we debate with the materialist, the secular, we must emphasize this point. Fortunately, the design, tadbir, in all creation is not one or two examples. There are many. All you have to do, look around. Incidentally, through these signs is how Quran argues this point. As it says, وَفِي خَلْقِكُمْ وَمَا يَبُثُّ مِنْ دَابَّةٍ آيَاتٌ لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. And in your creation, in all the animals that he scattered on earth are signs for those who believe in certain, those who have gained certainty. It means those who want to gain certainty need to reflect on their own creation as well as other creatures on earth. All you need to do, be fair-minded, without any bias, and think. Use your mind. You see, the philosophical debates may amuse your mind and keep an argument going. But at the end, these debates do not really settle in the heart. They do not really give satisfying answers to one's curiosity. As a result, Many philosophers towards end of their lives conclude and say, I realize what I didn't realize. In the matter of human soul, we also have differences with the materialist. They think this soul, this consciousness that we have, is a result of some chemical composition in our body. There is no soul, no spirit, no ruh. As the Quran says, while the Quran says, فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. When I have fashioned him in due proportion, completed him, and breathed into him of my spirit. Chapter 15, verse 29. فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ means he completed. He fashioned all parts of the body. Then, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. He granted the soul. We note the materialists do not contrast, do not distinguish between the physical body's effects and soul's effects properly. The soul's effects are about quality, while the physical effects are about quantity. Material or matter can be analyzed, can be counted, divided, multiplied, subtracted. It has dimensions like length, width, depth, weight, and so forth. Whereas things like love, anger, sorrow, happiness, can you take them to the lab and measure them? Can you divide anger into several equal parts? Can you measure how heavy or how narrow love is, or any other thing that affects your soul, your ruh? These are qualitative, not quantitative things. If you step on the most precise scale in the world, and while standing on the scale, you think about the weight of Mount Everest. Your weight on the scale does not change by even the weight of an atom, because what is in your mind has to do with your soul, and gravity has no effect on it. How many square feet is your friendship with someone? Therefore, when we realize that there are things that are not quantitative by this world's measure, we will realize these are coming from another dimension of our beings, namely our souls. The materialists, the secular, have not paid attention to this and just think once the body is complete, these are all properties of the chemical compositions that are already in it. They have not thought through or drilled down enough in the subject matter to discover the reality. A simple example would be when someone asks you why a matchstick lights up. You say, well, it's because you strike it or rub it against something. What you do not realize is that it is due to the oxygen, presence of oxygen in the air, that it lights up. And that if there was no oxygen in the air, no matter how many times you rubbed it against anything, you struck it against anything, nothing would spark or burn. It is the same concept here. The effects of soul is a subtle phenomenon that the materialists have not been able to grasp. Life as we know it enters the body when the body is ready to receive it. فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. So, materialists look at this very superficially. This is why Quran taunts these people, as it says, يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. They know only some appearance, outer things of the life of the world. Chapter 30, verse 7. They look at things superficially. they do not look at things deeply inward. They do not look closely. At any case, the Noble Quran, which was revealed 1400 years ago, has put this subject matter under microscope more thoroughly and informed us as much as we can possibly understand. So, when human possesses the spirit, the soul, it can attain virtues and reach Kamal, perfection, as we talked about it before. Now, back to Tadbir, the design and aim, the intelligence behind everything in creation. Allah has given us numerous signs, yet you see some scientists might argue against this reasoning. For example, they may say, well, this is all due to evolution. Firstly, okay, then we ask them, let's take your discoveries, your inventions, your advances in science that you yourself admit have evolved. Was there not intelligence, knowledge, and insight behind these advancements? It was your knowledge and insight that was built up and evolved over a period of time to reach these discoveries, these new discoveries, new frontiers. Without this intelligence, the advancement of knowledge would have not been possible. Secondly, evolution is a theory that is still open to debate on many fronts and yet to be proven, as the whole theory of transformation is still a theory and there are still ongoing debates. And in itself is a big topic we're not going to have time to get into here. But it suffices to say this, that even when Darwin came up with the theory of evolution, he and his family had a lifetime involvement with the Church of England. In the Darwin household, formal adherence to the Anglican Church was often combined with the Unitarian belief. Interestingly, Unitarian belief was a form of Protestant nonconformism that departed from the Church of England in its denial of the Trinity and the doctrine of eternal damnation. He was a member of his church, and while he sought explanation in laws of nature rather than miracles, he saw adaptation of species as evidence of design, tadbir. Though he thought of religion as a tribal survival strategy, Darwin was reluctant to give up the idea of God as an ultimate lawgiver. You can read more about him on University of Cambridge's Darwin Correspondence Project or his autobiography. Even before Darwin, Lamarck, who was a French naturalist and a biologist and academic, and an early proponent of the idea that biological evolution occurred and proceeded in accordance with natural laws, in his book, Philosophie zoologique, Philosophy of Zoology, Lamarck referred to God as the sublime author of nature. Lamarck's religious views are examined in the book of Lamarck, the founder of evolution, 1901, by Alphonse Packard. According to Packard, from Lamarck's writings, he may be regarded as a deist. The philosopher of biology, Michael Ruse, described Lamarck as believing in God as an unmoved mover, creator of the world and its laws, who refuses to intervene miraculously in his creation. Yet, despite of all this, some atheists take the theory of evolution and somehow present it as an evidence for their atheism. Then there are those who say, all these signs and the order in the universe all came about by Well, we all know chance is something random, not general. Exception, not a rule. When we define chance, we don't really expect it. We just think there's a probability that it may happen sometimes. How often we don't know. When you say you ran into your friend at the store and chatted with him, you were not really expecting to meet him there. It was by accident, by chance. But if you wish to see him, you usually have a much more certain way to contact him through phone call, email, text, etc. In other words, what are the chances that every time you go to any store, you're going to see your friend? Yes, once or twice, you may get lucky and go to a store and see him there and say, hey, incidentally, I wanted to contact you and see you. But let's say every time you want to see him, do you expect to run into him in the store? The answer is obviously not. Hence, accidents or chances do not repeat every time. They are exception, not the general rule. The intelligence, the design is also general, not by chance. You see the order in the universe, the natural laws in operation repeatedly, over and over, from the atom to the matter. In the matter to the atom in the matter to the stars, the sun and the moon, from the four seasons to the plants and vegetations, to the animals and, human every day and every year. You see order and scheme repeating over and over with precise design. Order governs everything. Accident is, accident and occurs by chance or occasionally. You heard the famous example where if I give you a rifle and throw a coin in the air and ask you to aim and shoot the coin, what are the chances you might hit it? If I do it again, what are the chances you hit the coin second time? What if I repeat 10 times? You may hit once or twice or even 3 times if you're really, really lucky. But what about hitting it 10 times? Well, if you hit it 2 or 3 times, we call you very lucky. But if you hit it all 10 times, it is not luck anymore. It is not by accident. It is with aim. We realize you are a highly skilled rifleman with a great capability to aim. We don't call you lucky. We call you a highly skilled marksman who knows how to aim precisely. If I throw it 10 times and you hit it once by chance, that is an accident. That is an accident. But when I throw it to the right, to the left, upward, downward, in any direction, and you hit it every time, you would really be insulted if I say you're lucky, and this is all accident. All materialists in the world agree that there is order in the nature and the laws of nature, yet no intelligence behind it. All exists, but not by design. It is interesting that when they discover a phenomenon, a law, immediately they generalize it. So it applies to all matters, like the physical law of buoyancy we talked about, which was generalized for any object that is immersed in any water, not just the Greek waters or European waters, in any water or even any fluid. When we talk about the speed of light at 300 kilometers per second, what are we talking about? We are talking about a visible light in general, regardless whether it's coming from a light bulb or a light coming from a star, regardless of where it is shining to. So all physical laws are general in nature. Nothing is by chance or by accident. That is why Quran talks about the signs that have order in them. They are general, not by chance. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب. Surely the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alteration of the night and the day, there are signs for men of understanding, those who use their mind and reflect. Chapter 3, verse 190. The general, everyday, natural law that creates the day and night repeatedly without any stops. Imagine all of a sudden we have 1 year of all nights or days. Can you imagine the implications? لآيات لقوم يعقلون. These are signs for those who think, reflect. لآيات لأولي الألباب. These are signs for men of understanding, those who use their mind, their intellect. May Allah never leave us on our own. May Allah make us among those who reflect and constantly remember Him. May Allah open our hearts and minds so we can see His signs with our intellect, with our aql. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام على من اتبع الهدى.